Becky Hill is the special guest on this week's ITV Studio Sessions, Friday night at 10:45. Now, there's been a change to our schedule with scenes some viewers may find distressing. Theresa May, the accidental Prime Minister.
Okay. One, take one.
A clapperboard is slammed inches from Theresa May's face as she is sitting waiting to be interviewed in her parliamentary office. Press and aides gather outside 10 Downing Street and Theresa May emerges dressed in red, stepping up to a lectern.
I will shortly leave the job that it has been the honour of my life to hold. The second female Prime Minister, but certainly not the last.
The hardest thing you have to do as a Chief of Staff is to tell your boss the game is up.
So I am today announcing that I will resign as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. It was incredibly frustrating. There were still things that I wanted to do.
Theresa May was Prime Minister for 3 tumultuous years.
I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love. I was frustrated with myself because my voice only caught right at the very end of the speech. My then Chief of Staff, Gavin Barwell, did say to me when I went in, I said I shouldn't have done that.
And I sort of slightly blew my top and fairly robustly said that for 2 years I encouraged her to show a bit more of her emotion and what she's actually like as a person, and she absolutely should not be apologising for being a bit upset.
And I just said to him, that's not how the press will see it. And of course it wasn't. That was the one thing. Forget the rest of the speech, forget everything else. That was the one thing they focused on.
That was a very brutal day. Westminster at its most brutal. The first female Prime Minister also left office with tears in her eyes.
Theresa May was forced out of office because she couldn't get Brexit done.
It became impossible for me, and I think that ultimately there were quite a few of my colleagues who probably didn't quite trust a Remainer delivering Brexit. They wanted a Brexiteer to deliver it.
Was she undone by her own weaknesses?
I think one of the things about Theresa is she's incredibly shy and doesn't like the job of communicating, doesn't like the job of selling.
Oh, the entire campaign was a total disaster from day one.
Is it a disadvantage in a leading politician to be an introvert?
Yes.
Or was she brought down by the betrayal of others?
The nose to the left, 432.
This is not Brexit.
Under Chequers, you lose control.
So the noes have it, the noes have it.
He phoned up to say he was resigning, but wasn't quite able to get the words out of his mouth. In the end, she had to say to him, look, I'm in a bit of a rush. Are you actually telling me you're resigning?
At the time, did you consider it a personal betrayal?
I don't use terms like that.
I think history will remember Theresa as a dedicated public servant who was probably in the wrong job at the wrong time.
Given what's followed, her reputation is enhanced. I mean, I didn't know at the time that truth and decency wasn't always going to be part of a Prime Minister's makeup.
Theresa May, the accidental Prime Minister. Theresa May signing copies of her book.
I don't miss it in the sense that life is a little easier these days, and I don't think you realise the stress until you step down, and then you recognise the stress that you were under.
It's 500.
That's 500. Right, I might take a break at 500.
Theresa May has stepped away from frontline politics. But she has written an account of her time in office and granted us exclusive access to film with her.
Brilliant. I mean, this is just mind-boggling.
Told mainly from inside the Conservative Party, by critics as well as friends, this is the story of her fateful political career at the top.
Last one.
Hey!
A tranquil stretch of the River Thames in Maidenhead, and at home, Theresa May sits at a kitchen table.
To understand Theresa May's approach to politics, it helps to understand her roots. Welcome to the world of her constituency and her kitchen.
This is a book that Philip gave me at Christmas. It's different recipes from... It's called The Food of France's Borderlands. I do have rather rather a lot of cookery books. Of course, Alain Roux has a restaurant in my constituency. And also in my constituency, Caldaises. I've got several of their cookery books, Italian. Really, really good.
So where does the interest in cooking stem from?
My grandmother was quite a good cook, but a very sort of basic cook. I used to enjoy some of her puddings particularly. My mother didn't have that great an interest in cooking, so maybe that's why I started having an interest. Sort of thought I'd take over.
An old family photograph.
My father was a clergyman. I think it's true to say that my parents always voted Conservative, but my father was very clear that as a vicar, he represented everybody in his parish. So I think that sense that his was a job where he was there for other people was something that was sort of instilled in me. There was always that sense that I could be what I wanted to be, that there was nothing that should hold me back simply because I was a girl. Looking back, I feel I should have been just that little bit more confident. Perhaps less shy would be a better description.
She goes to Oxford in the mid-1970s, where women are still something of a novelty. There, she meets her husband, Philip.
Well, we were both interested in politics, but I have to say I think the attraction was rather more than just the politics.
Theresa and Philip get married. He goes into the city. She, via the Bank of England and a spell as a local councillor in South London, into national politics, standing in Maidenhead during Tony Blair's 1997 landslide win.
Thank you. Would you like a balloon?
Theresa Mary May has been duly elected to serve as a member for the said constituency.
A victorious Theresa May, and elsewhere a victorious Tony Blair.
Tony Blair's majority is the largest ever won by a Labour leader.
Do you think they'll send you to some sort of charm school or image-making classes?
You mean I need to go to charm school? No, I don't think so.
By now, both her parents have died.
It's one of the great sadnesses is that neither of them was able to see me as a Member of Parliament.
She's wearing a fixed smile. A timeline slides in a rapid blur from Labour landslide victory May 1997 to Tories form coalition government May 2010.
When the Conservatives regain power under David Cameron, she is made Home Secretary, one of the most senior jobs in the government. By now, she has earned a reputation as a Tory moderniser, but she remains something of an outsider.
I don't think she was part of the boys' curry Friday night or whatever it was that they had. You know, she was a colleague and a cabinet member, but I don't think she was necessarily part of that gang.
Media advisor Elizabeth Sanderson.
Nor was she always seen as the most collegiate of colleagues.
I found her, I would say, very uncompromising. I mean, she was completely obviously on top of her brief, but wanted things her way and only her way. And then I'm sure, actually, that when she eventually became Prime Minister, that many of her cabinet sort of thought, well, this is how she did things. There was a sort of lack of teamwork. So maybe that set the tone for them.
Sajid Javid.
Polite applause was about as friendly as it got here. The Home Secretary and the Police Federation don't exactly see eye to eye.
Theresa May was not afraid to make enemies, even among the Tories' natural allies.
I do not want to have to impose change on you, because I want you to show the public that you want to change.
When she was Home Secretary, she had that extraordinary speech she made to the police about them needing to reform, which was an incredibly courageous thing to do.
Home Secretary, I believe you're a disgrace.
All right. It's shameful and dishonourable.
When you're appointed Home Secretary, it's kind of, well, the good news is you're Home Secretary, the bad news is you're speaking to the Police Federation conference next week.
But her biggest challenge as Home Secretary is to deliver David Cameron's pledge to cut immigration numbers.
And this is not just about making the UK a more hostile place for illegal migrants, it is also about fairness.
Underpinning her immigration policy is the so-called hostile environment. Particularly controversial is a scheme introduced in several London boroughs to deter illegal immigrants. white vans with the caption, "Go home or face arrest."
I thought that that particular approach with the vans, the messaging, was just the wrong approach, because I think it's damaging to community relations, and I think there are better ways to tackle this issue.
As Home Secretary, obviously I take responsibility for what was done within my department, but I think and it was wrong, and we stopped it. We realised after a fairly short period of time that we needed to stop that.
It was a policy that would come back to haunt her as Prime Minister.
Theresa May, the accidental Prime Minister.
Facing your fear is not the same as